I am a pro-Israel activist.
An activist and a supporter of the Palestinian-initiated boycott, divestment and sanctions.
Hi, my name's Tamara.
I'm Hilary.
I'm very excited that Israel is hosting this year's Eurovision in Tel Aviv.
Palestinians have therefore asked for people of conscience around the world, for artists, performers, television presenters, not to go to Eurovision, to boycott Israel, not only at Eurovision but all the time, in support of Palestinians and their liberation struggle.
I think it's very discriminatory. I mean, I think that it's really unfortunate that, calls to boycott Israel have taken on such a widespread form. When you look at countries around the world that are committing human rights abuses, I mean, really, Israel is not one that comes to mind. No country's human rights record is perfect. Certainly the UK's isn't, certainly other Western countries don't have a perfect human rights record. But when you look at actually where in the world are people really suffering, it's so much more pressing that we do something about sort of those situations where the scale of human rights abuses is so much greater.
We decided to do a spoof of YMCA when we first had a protest outside Heaven, which is an LGBTQ+ nightclub in London. That was a queer-led protest against the performance by Netta Barzilai, who was Israel's Eurovision winner last year, and she acts as a cultural ambassador for the Israeli state.
Wonder Woman, don't you ever forget, you're divine and he's about to regret.
I think she's a great cultural ambassador. I think her song and its message of female empowerment really spoke to a lot of different people. It's a very sort of positive message. I think it's unfortunate that when people think of Israel, they think of sort of war and conflict and political strife, and actually Israel has so much more to offer. Israel has a thriving music scene that's really centered in Tel Aviv, and that's kind of what Netta embodies to me, I think.
Well, Israel has an official nation branding program called Brand Israel, which it launched in, I think, 2005, and that talks about exposing Israel's prettier face to the world, explicitly to distract from its oppression of Palestinians, which it knows is an image problem for it.
In comparison to other countries in the Middle East, Israel is definitely, I'd say, a safe haven for for people who identify as gay. It's really the only country where you can sort of walk around publicly, holding hands with your partner. No one's judgmental, and especially in Tel Aviv, that's very much the case.
Israel is the supposed haven of LGBT rights in the Middle East. That may be comparatively so, but that doesn't in any way excuse its treatment of the Palestinians. A man comes at you and says, oh, he's domestically abusive towards his partner, oh, but he's really nice to animals. These are totally unrelated issues. It's kind of a ridiculous argument to make that they cancel each other out.
Pinkwashing as a term doesn't really make sense. I think it's very hypocritical of people who support Palestinian rights to focus on what Israel is doing and sort of say, well, Israel's LGBT rights are just a distraction, a convenient distraction from what's going on in Gaza. You can't ignore the way that Hamas treats gays as sort of inferior in every single way. There's no way that you could ever have an openly gay relationship in Gaza or in the West Bank. They're killed just for who they are, just for their identity.
And I think that Israel's exploitation of LGBT identities, so-called pinkwashing, is actually really, really cynical. And actually, if it really cared about Palestinian queers, which it doesn't care about any Palestinians, it wouldn't do that, because it actually risks making what homophobia does exist in Palestinian society worse.
I just think that it's a really unfortunate use of time. I really think that people who care about human rights are just wasting their time trying to boycott Eurovision. The fact is, it's going to happen anyway. It's going to be a big event. People love watching it.
We're not playing like oppression Olympics here. As I said, all Palestinians, queer and non-queer alike, are facing Israel's bombs, facing humiliation at checkpoints on a daily basis, facing dispossession from their land and denial of their rights. Queer Palestinians also face LGBT phobia, as LGBT people do in every society. So they're intertwined, they're inseparable, and I support both of those liberation struggles simultaneously. But trying to play off LGBT rights against Palestinian oppression under Israeli apartheid is not going to wash, and I don't think most queer people with their heads screwed on straight really buy it.
I just don't see why anyone wants to put their energy into boycotting a cultural festival in a country that actually has a very good human rights record, considering it's under so much threat all the time in terms of, it's under security threat, it has hostile neighbours at every border.
I definitely would consider boycotting other countries as well. I mean, boycott is a tactic and a strategy, it's not a principle. And the key factors for me are whether that oppressed group has called for a boycott. And Palestinians have overwhelmingly.
The situation undoubtedly is very, very sad, but there's other factors to blame. Gaza borders with Egypt. And so Egypt also controls a border with Gaza and can decide what goes in and out. And so when you're looking at the situation in Gaza, it's really not solely, Israel does what it can to support Gazans, but it's not Israel's responsibility. Israel isn't within Gaza. Israel doesn't control Gaza.
This year's Eurovision is going to go down as one of the most controversial ever, and also one of the least well attended ever. Like, the BDS campaign that Palestinians have initiated has been really successful in showing that Eurovision is political. Tourists have stayed away. Actually, Israeli hotels have had to drop their prices by 70%. They've been giving away tickets for free because they haven't sold.
So many other countries across the world have very complicated histories, have done very, questionable things, and yet they don't receive any criticism. And it's always Israel. It's always Israel that's the automatic sort of evil. The whole nature of Israel is to provide a safe haven for the Jewish people, and to provide a state where, Jews can essentially be free, which is something that Jewish people have been persecuted for centuries. And so I just think I don't really think that you can sort of disentangle anti-Semitism from the question. I don't think people are always motivated by that, but I definitely think that is a factor.